Okay, thank you all for joining us. Today's session will focus on startup software architecture and fractional CTO. And we're honored to have with us Wael. He has an extensive expertise in this field, and he will be leading today's talk. Wael, I let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, just checking to make sure my presentation is it visible on screen for everyone?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
All right. All right. So real quick background. My name is Wael. I'm based in Abu Dhabi in the UAE, and I have been doing tech for as long as I can remember. Actually, I started when I was 13 years old. And I've been working with so many different languages, worked on a lot of products, had my own startups, and done practically everything under the sun. And besides doing tech, I also sit on the board of a few companies. And we're also a family office, so we've invested and we've built many other companies, not primarily in tech, but in oil and gas, financial services, wealth management, oil and gas, power and water, logistics and healthcare, et cetera, et cetera. And over the past 2 or 3 years, while looking at the ecosystem in mostly in Dubai and Saudi Arabia, we started to notice that, or I started to notice that, the availability of high-level tech talent or tech talent in general it's very low. You cannot find good talent in the Middle East, especially with a high caliber. And any high caliber technologist, whether he's a lead engineer or a chief technology officer, are obviously very cost prohibitive to hire because only the enterprises can afford people like that. And so, after I started three tech companies actually. Two of them I sold. One of them failed too soon for its time, I guess. I've set up my own consultancy where I work as a fractional chief technology officer to startups and as a technology advisor to the enterprises, right? And how this came about was I've noticed that number one, trying to find tech talent is difficult, and number two, trying to afford them is even worse. So I set up my own consultancy that kind of bridges that kind of gap, takes care of these two problems, and it enables startups to actually hire someone with my 20 plus years experience that would not be a drain on company resources in terms of cost and bonuses, equity, et cetera, right? So the engagement that I found that works with almost everybody is, hey, listen, we need to hire you for X number of months, and when we're finished, thank you very much, goodbye. And that's what led me to have this consultancy. Of course, the enterprises are a different story. The requirements are completely different, but let's just focus on startups for the time being. And that's where we are today. I met Hani last year, or a little bit a year before Hani, I think, at one of the events in Dubai. And we got talking, and I did a presentation for the AUBI Park cohort last year, and one of them ended up hiring me, and I'm still working with them today. Um, and Hani, and I've wanted to do a presentation to the cohort today about number one, what is a chief technology officer? A lot of people kind of confuse what that role actually is. What do CTOs do? What are the responsibilities? And then jump into what are fractional CTOs and how do they differ from a full-time internal CTO hire? And I put a slide just to show kind of like a table difference between the two, and that you guys can download this presentation. I'll give it to Hani and read it for yourselves, as well as talk just a little bit about software architecture and why it's important. I won't get into technical details about it. and then we'll go into a Q&A session for everybody here. So with that in mind, so this is me just quickly talking about the brief introduction that I already gave you. And please, anybody who wants to interrupt me, go ahead. I'm just going to be going through these slides. It's a short presentation, and that should give us plenty of time to go into a Q&A session. So what is a Chief Technology Officer? What I have seen is that a lot of startups, especially those who have young founders, confuse a CTO with a lead engineer. CTOs don't write code. That's not their role. If you do that, then they're just very, very expensive coders to hire. CTO is he or her role is to basically communicate the requirements from the founders, the CEO, CFO, Chief Product Officer, etc., translate that into an architecture and a design that the developers then understand. You see, too many times I've seen startups, hire out of India or Pakistan or something, thinking that these guys are going to get paid $9 an hour and they're going to get great product in the end. That has never happened, because the outsourced companies' business model is, you tell us what you want and we'll build it. So unless you have an architect to explain to them exactly how a software should be built, they're just going to go and build something that is not scalable, something that is rigid, a monolithic application, and give it to you and say, I've done my job. This is what you asked for. I've given it to you, but without any forethought into what happens in the future. Because more often than not, as you guys in the startup, with your startup, you start to go to market, you start to get customer feedback. There are times where you either need to pivot the entire business or just a part of the business, and you need your software, which is the backbone of your entire company, to be able to maneuver around these kind of changes. And this is where things like architecture and design starts to come into play. But that's not for the founding team to worry about. That's for the Chief Technology Officer to worry about. So besides strategy, using the correct tech stack, putting the team together, the dev team that will actually be able to implement the vision of the CTO, his job is to also kind of forecast, based on experience, where you guys are going to be. I know a lot of you guys think, no, my business idea is great. This is exactly what the market wants, et cetera, but you'll be surprised that as we start to roll things out, either you need to start rolling out new features very quickly, and that can't happen with monolithic applications, or whoops, we're trying to solve the wrong problem here. We're actually discovering another problem. Hey, Mr. CTO, shift in strategy. This is the change that we need. Please take care of it. Right? And get the devs to actually follow through on all of that. In the background, the Chief Technology, besides obviously strategy and interacting with the other C-levels, he's responsible, like I said, the technology stack, what programming languages are best to use for developing the kind of application, because some applications, they don't need low latency, for example, or you have some applications that need to scale to hundreds of millions of users. So it depends really on what the company is trying to achieve. And then the CTO will align internal tools, resources, etc., to make sure that that can happen without any issues. And for a lot of people that think, CTOs are bringing them in is early, may not be a good idea. Try later on to fix your problems without a CTO and see the kind of mistakes, those expensive mistakes that you're going to have. Most everybody just scraps their old system and starts to rebuild it from scratch, which is something you want to avoid at all costs, especially when you have limited time, resources, money, etc., and you have live paying customers. Obviously, the CTO has to oversee the development, so all our project management tools are in place, all our tools that make sure that there is code quality checks, security checks, regulatory checks. If you're a health tech startup or you're a fintech startup, there's a lot of regulatory requirements from a regulator that has to be implemented and monitored, and make sure that you follow it, because that would be an extremely expensive fine to have from the regulator if you did not follow their rules and regulations. And this is extremely common in those two industries, health tech and fintech. And then, of course, you got to look at all the other things like reliability, security, cybersecurity. Once you start to pop on people's radars, naturally the number of people trying to attack your infrastructure, your services, take you down, steal your data, etc., starts to climb. And you want to make sure that you put all of that kind of stuff beforehand to avoid problems later on down the line. And then it's just a process of iteration. There's always new features, new ideas that you guys dream about that you need implemented, and some can be implemented very quickly, and some can be implemented a little slower. But the architecture has to be able to accommodate for these kind of changes. And this is where a lot of these projects start to fail, is when they need to implement something new, right? This is another graphic just at a high level of everything that I've said. Data security, product roadmap, technology stack, et cetera, et cetera. Now, here's what a CTO does not do, and I touched on this a little earlier. They're not coders. Now, unless you have a chief technology officer who is a co-founder with you, obviously, yes, he's going to write some code, but that will detract from his core business role, which is about strategy, alignment, project management, architecture, design, and everything else, right? It's, yes, you could get away with it at the earlier stages. That's fine. That's not a problem. But that's probably not a role you want to keep him in for the long term. Number two, not a short-term fix for poor product market fit. That's not his role. His role is really to execute on what the founders are trying to do, what the business is trying to do. And if there's a poor market fit, you guys need to realign the business, and then the CTO will jump in with a new plan based on your assessment to say, okay, change of plans. This is the new focus. This is what we're going to do. And the CTO will be like, right, okay, got it. Let me translate this to with our current architecture, salvage what we have, and give instructions to the dev team as to what to proceed with next, and prioritize those tasks to get you to market as quickly as possible. The last 2 points revolve around product managers. Now, this is another thing that a lot of people confuse. They think that the product development is actually the role of a CTO. That's really too far from the truth. Organizations that are well-funded, etc., they have a role called the Chief Product Officer, CPO. The CPO is the one that aligns, again, company vision with everything from the product, how the product is designed, how it is experienced by the end user. So everything from user interface, user experience, how everything, what this button should do, how this should work, how the flow of data should happen from this point to this point, that makes it easy for the user to understand. A lot of people dump this on the tech team. Now, remember, techies are not usually creative people. They're creative in code, but not creative on human interactions. And this is where a lot of people think, oh, you're the CTO, design the interface for us, or do this for us, etc. I tell them, no, actually, I'm supposed to get all of that and then do the implementation based on what the chief product officer tells me, along with the feedback from the chief executive officer, chief financial officer, chief operating officer, etc. Take all of those, put it together into a plan, and start to roll things out from there. So this is one distinction a lot of people don't think about. And I just wanted to make it clear here that CTOs are not CPOs. At the beginning, they can hack it together. At the early stage, that's fine. But there'll be a lot of hand-holding from the founders of the company on how to do this and what they need to do. So with that in mind, now, what is a fractional chief technology officer? Actually, fractional leadership is a relatively new concept, whether it's marketing, technology, finance, etc., is that we need the experience, but we can't afford to pay for it. And nor should you, especially at an early stage. You do not need to have that kind of heavyweight sitting 24 hours in your organization. There's really no need for it. You would be using maybe 10% of the guy's capabilities at that early stage in your company. As you grow, of course, the time requirements of these C-level, fractional C-level people starts to increase up until the time you guys get, proper funding that you can then bring in full-time talent, and the fractional team will be able to onboard these people for you. So I have worked with, startups where I had to hire their tech team, and then when they got their funding and everything, they tell me, okay, well, thank you very much. Could you also help us hire a chief technology officer, hand over everything to him, and bring him into the swing of things so that I can depart while the new CTO takes over. So the fractional CTO is a very cost-effective way of tapping into the kind of talent, like my talent, for example, but you only pay for an hour a day on a retainer basis, right? So a monthly retainer or whatever engagement you decide to work with your fractional leadership. The nice thing about fractional CTOs as well is that I've worked on multiple projects across different industries, and the lessons learned from those industries will apply also to your startup and bring that external experience. So it's say, oh, we faced this problem with so-and-so startup or so-and-so enterprise. Let me take that experience and implement it into your project, right? Obviously, other things that are standard translates everything from the requirements into a technical plan that the dev teams understand, manage the dev teams, build an entire development workflow, which I won't get into. It's a little technical, but in order to make sure that code quality, security, builds, etc., are all done beforehand, before the code goes live to your customers. Because if you release buggy code to your customers, naturally it's going to bring down your entire system, and your users are going to be pretty upset about the whole thing, right? As well as obviously trying to manage budgets and expectations of the founding team. Personally, I have gone above and beyond this for my clients because we're a big family office. We at one point we employed over 5,000 people across multiple industries, which I stated before. So I've got networks and connections with certain high level people in certain industries. I have also used my personal network to connect startups with lawyers that I know, for example, right? Or on one of the projects, which actually is a graduate of the AEBI Park, I introduced them to lawyers. I introduced them to crypto exchanges. I've introduced them to regulators. So I've used that network to kind of bring my network in and try to help the founders, because I want to see these projects succeed. Quick note on strategic benefits without the full-time. This table kind of gives you a good idea of responsibility versus time engagement. And you can see where a fractional CTO sits compared to a full-time in-house CTO. Naturally, full-time CTOs cost more to have than, for example, part-time or interim or fractional CTOs. So there's a cost association that comes with this that people need to start thinking about, like, okay, if I don't have a co-founder CTO, what are my options? So either I have to hire in-house, hire part-time, hire an intern, or hire a fractional CTO. And that gives you guys, as startup owners, flexibility on how you want to engage. And of course, if it doesn't work out or the target has been completed, then the contract is canceled, and there's no other liabilities on you. Like, for example, you're not responsible in the UAE for paying for the residency visas, end of service benefits, health insurance, giving equity, which is expensive, to contracted talent, etc. Right? Quick slide on when does it make sense. You've got some funding in place, so you're like, okay, I really need to build a strong product right out the door, but I can't afford a full-time hire. That's one of the times where a fractional CTO does make sense. Hiring and vetting your first devs, You need an expert to come take a look at your architecture, maybe advise you and tell you this is being done right or it's being done wrong based on the existing developers that you've worked with. If you have something already up and running, what kind of advice do you have on how to then make it scalable if it's not scalable, re-architect if it's not architected properly, et cetera, et cetera. And also you need tech talent quickly, that you can bring in without going through a lengthy process with recruiters or trying to find talent in the market, et cetera, and to onboard him into the organization. Plus also have him sit in as your CTO for investor meetings. So I've been doing this literally the meeting just before I was helping one of my startups at an investor meeting as a chief technology officer, and they asked some technology related questions to which I had answers to give them comfort that we have a handle on the tech side of things. This is the table I was talking about. I'm not going to read it all to you, but it's a good summary of what is the difference between a full-time CTO and a fractional chief technology officer hire. And that should give you guys a clear view of, okay, I think it makes sense that I do need a full-time chief technology officer, or you know what, I'm not ready yet. Maybe a fractional chief technology officer would be a better fit for me for the interim. And then as the company grows, goes from there, etc., you can transition over to actually finding and hiring a full-time once you've raised more capital. Now, again, fractional CTOs, when it comes to startups, are usually around coming in and helping build out the minimum viable product, or at least the alpha version of whatever it is that you guys are building. And over here, I brought in some points that you would have to look out for, as to what it is that the fractional CTO can do during the MVP development stage, understanding the objectives, obviously selecting the right technology stack, putting together a realistic timeline for the launch of the MVP, because you need to communicate that to your investors, obviously, your seed investors or angel investors, as to we're going to go live at least with a beta version on so-and-so date. Obviously, architecture, technology stack, and mentoring the developers. More often than not, you guys are not going to be hiring senior developers, i.e. people with 5, 6+ years of experience, because again, they're low cost prohibitive. I have worked with remote teams in Pakistan, India, Lebanon, and Europe. And I mentored these developers. So my role is to also help them understand why we do certain things, why we architect this way, why are we doing, et cetera, et cetera. And over time, they start to get a good grasp of this. And then your developers start to become better and stronger at it, so that they can work autonomously without having the CTO involved, 24 hours a day, right? Something goes wrong, they don't need to message them in the middle of the night. They more or less know what they need to do. They just take an approval and go ahead and do it. Implementing, another point is obviously project management and implementing best practices in how software is developed. And this is important. A lot of people think, let's just get this out to market and go, but then later on discover that it becomes a very expensive mistake to do that. It's okay to spend a little time to get all of this done beforehand, because it'll save you months of rework and problems and heartache later on. Assist in the implementation of CI/CD tools. This is for the software development lifecycle. CI stands for continuous integration, and CD stands for continuous deployment, so that every time you guys make changes, it goes through a whole lifecycle stage from step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before it is deployed to the public, right? Risk management and compliance, especially on regulated environments. We touched base on that, fintech, health tech, etc. That's the role of the CTO to assess and make sure that whatever we're building follows these rules, and puts all processes in place for the handover to a permanent CTO, who probably I would have helped hire, and I would know his capabilities and how his values align with mine. So that makes the handover easy, because then he would continue from there to take over from where I have left off, right? And there is a phase of handover that needs to happen while the developers are doing their work, so your business is not interrupted. So I was brought in to see if any in this slide with any IPAR cohorts that do need fractional help. These are the kind of things that I would work with to help you guys, if onboarded, on how to improve or build or get everything right from the get-go up and until product launch, as well as all the stuff that I did not write, i.e. the investor meetings, introductions to people in the network, depending on what industry you guys are working in. More often than not, I have touched or I have been interacting in that particular industry, and then take it from there, right? So that's the presentation in a nutshell. I know I've spoken a lot over here, but I'm leaving some room for the Q&A with you guys. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have for me.
Hello. My name is Joseph. I'm the tech lead at Nuat, and I have a couple of questions. Obviously, it's a pleasure to meet you. So my main experience in this role, first of all, let me just introduce our product real quick, okay? So we are a smart software platform that connects to any solar system and helps homeowners use their energy more efficiently. It also gives installer real-time insights to maintain and upsell betters. We're starting with solar, but expanding into full home energy management soon, all without any hardware, software only stage, okay? And my main experience has been as a developer, and now I am a tech lead, but I still feel, what is a CTO? Like I have been contemplating that question. How do I become a CTO? How do I shift my mindset from being a developer that takes the business requirements and just translates it into code to a CTO?
Right. Okay, thank you, Joseph. So I'm very familiar with your industry. If you recall earlier in my meeting, we had a power and water company where we were doing everything from gas-fired power plants to solar energy plants, especially for corporates in Dubai that wanted to kind of power their offices using solar energy as well. And they were tapping into third-party systems to kind of help them get their analytics and everything, their usage, input, output, etc. And then any additional power generated, sell it back to the grid. So I'm very familiar with this industry. Now, the transition, if you would look at, maybe I'll talk about my experience of how I transitioned into it. So obviously I started as a junior developer. I'm a self-taught computer scientist. It was a passion of mine. I just wanted to learn new languages, etc. I wanted to be a game developer. That's when I started back in the 80s. Is to be a game developer, and then I just learned and picked up and did everything myself, and I started as a junior developer. Now, the transition of my life from junior developer to senior developer was that I had more tasks, more experience, writing languages, seeing different problems, developing for those problems. But there was always somebody on top that was dictating architecture and design. When you transition from junior developer to senior developer to team manager, this is the key over here, is when you start to manage a team underneath you, you're still coding, but you have 2, 3, 4, 10, 20 coders underneath you that you're also looking after, and it could be a subsection of the bigger picture, but you're handling that team. That is your first step into going into Chief Technology Officer. Now you're in the trenches with your developers over here in terms of code-wise, right? So you're handling more of the difficult code kind of problems, whereas your team below you are working on, let's just say, easier coding tasks, right? Which unfortunately now are being replaced by Copilot or any other large language model, AI to do all these kind of tasks. But then that transition is what springboards you to say, okay, I'm going to spend less of my time coding and handing over all of these tasks to the people below me, while I start to look at the architecture, understanding the architecture and everything, and obviously project management, and you have a knack for picking up what are the technology stack that you need to implement. Once you get past this kind of phase, you're going to start going into the strategy side of things. You're going to see that, okay, now I've got the founders or my CEO or anybody else coming to me and saying, listen, I want my product to do this, this, this. Or the chief product officer will come and tell you, hey, I need this, this, and this done. And you start to see that your role is evolving into more strategic thinking rather than code. And you're going to start giving the instructions down to the team. You have to manage a team. You can't do it yourself, right? And then when you transition into that kind of phase, you're going to start to see like, okay, I'm spending more time doing strategy, doing architecture, and taking responsibility of, you know, the project timelines, the team, hiring, firing, etc. That's really when you are a CTO in the sense of the world as it comes to small and medium-sized businesses. Enterprises have a completely different definition for this. It's a completely different thing. It also involves interacting with the board of the companies, briefing the board on how these strategies or this implementation or this will help the bottom line of the organization. I need more budgets in order to achieve these. So you start to get into budgeting and everything else. But let's just put that aside. So when you start to see that you're doing less code and more strategy and architectural design and project management, you know that you're transitioning there. I don't know how many developers you have, so I can't answer for you where you are in this journey.
Okay, we have like 2 developers, but I have another question follow up what you just said. Okay, so the role you said before that the role of the CTO is not to code but to be strategic, correct? So
one of them, yeah.
Sorry. So my question is, what do you define as strategic beyond choosing the tech stack, beyond choosing if we're going microservice or monolithic, beyond choosing AWS or Azure? How do you define strategic that is not tech related, you know?
Right. So when I sit down with the founders of these organizations, they'd lay out their plan. You know, they're like, oh, we want to do the sun, the moon, and the stars. This is what's going to happen, and we need it done in a month. Typical. This happens all the time, right? You as a chief technology officer, before you even work on the architecture and the design and everything, you're strategizing with them on the business, and you're telling them, no, hang on a sec. We don't need to build this right now. We only need this certain set of features to go to our MVP, but we will make provisions to do X, Y, and Z as we go along down the line. This changes the perception of the founders and their expectations and their budgets and everything as to how they want to implement and go with things. So instead of saying, it's going to take us 3 months to build everything that you've asked for, but we don't need all of that. That's your role as a CTO, is to tell them, we don't need to have to build all of these features because they're outside critical path. Right now, we only need this subset of features to go live and go live sooner and start generating revenue sooner, while we are also, as part of the strategy document, etc., are sitting down trying to add and prioritize the next set of features, etc. Now, implementing the features is a different story. That's the technology side. But as an example of strategy, you're supposed to be advising the founders by telling them, no, it's not going to happen. And you should not be afraid to say, no, this is wrong. This is not efficient. This is not what the market needs. Or, you know, it's like, okay, the founders are saying, hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z, and we're a fintech company. You as a CTO would already know, it's like, okay, if we need to implement these regulatory requirements, we need to focus on getting this license, or we need to get this done, or whatever it is, so that the founders, who should also be aware of it, but they need to understand what are the technical implementations of trying to implement these, as well as the timelines, which translates into budgets, which translates into a lot of other things, and your rollout plan. And this is where the inputs come from CTO, especially somebody who has worked in multiple industries, right? Not every CTO would have this kind of experience, but that is part of the strategic stuff I was talking about, that you need to advise your founders what to do, how to do it, based on what they want to achieve, right? Did I answer that clearly?
Yes, it's nice. thank you for your answers. It was very clear.
Right. Thank you.
Hello, I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So first, thank you for the presentation. The information were very clear. But I had a question which is a bit tricky when it comes to someone who's offering fractional CTO services. When you work with different companies, usually they have, or startups, they have different needs. For example, some of them need an HR system, a financial system, or etc. So how do you go about the different needs? Like you need to build your knowledge on different platforms, or do you adopt a certain stack of applications and you make sure that your team are well knowledgeable to support them, and then you offer them to the startups?
So I advise. It's a good example, Dania. I'll tell you. So one of the startups I'm working for right now, they do need accounting, financial accounting, obviously. They need a CRM and they need HR, right? And you guys, I think at AUB iPark, you have a deal with Zoho for some credits or something to take those. Now, my job over here with this startup was not to build from scratch. Believe me, if there is a third-party software that you can integrate with that's already done this and they've done it better than you, please use that. You are not in the business, so I'm sorry, I don't know what your startup does, Dania, but I'm pretty sure maybe it's not HR or accounting or anything like that, right?
No, actually, we're planning to do the same thing as you're doing, fractional CTO.
All right, perfect. So the idea here is that we would quickly go to market and see what is available. I will not, the product I'm building for my client or helping my client build, HR and accounting and all that is not their core. It has nothing to do with their business. So instead, what we would do is, how do we get our data integrated with the third-party systems that we're going to do? So every time, like, for example, a user signs up on our platform, we need to take that data and put it to whatever CRM product that we choose, right? So, the founders, they evaluate 2, 3, 4 CRM products. I give them some ideas. In your case, like, for example, you guys have Zoho One, so it'd be like, okay, let's integrate with Zoho One since you guys have credits with them, right? It's free money. Sure, why don't we integrate with them? Do they provide all that I need for HR and accounting, etc.? Absolutely, they do, and they provide more. You won't even use 5% of their features, and they've done a better job than you could ever do by building from scratch. So it's an integration point that we integrate to third parties in order to make whatever needs to happen. And this is, we've done this to death many, many times. One of our platforms has integrated with, I think, 6 different service providers. So we do our core stuff, but then we branch out to push the data to these 6 providers. That gives the team a holistic view of, the entire organization. I know Ali is raising his hand, but Daniel, did that answer your question or?
Yes, I think I got it. So you don't really have a stack of applications which you always offer. You go to the market, you do the bidding, you check different options for the company who are contacting you, and you come back with your recommendations.
Yeah,
right?
Correct, because I have to look at it's not a one size fits all. Like, for example, some accounting products, for example, that are out there, they work great. But for example, they are not geared for the United Arab Emirates tax system, for example. So this product would be the wrong product to use, right? Whereas others, no, they have taken into consideration the UAE tax laws for VAT, corporate tax, etc. Some startups say, okay, we're multi-regional. We need an accounting software that can handle UAE, Europe, and America, for example, right? So I would help them in that evaluation just from the surface kind of thing. But once they find a product that they like, my job is to then open up the API, the application programming interface, to see how we can interface our product with theirs. And if they give us all the let's just say the endpoints that we need in order for us to properly integrate with them. And that takes a day or two to just read through the documentation. When we think we found one, We would go to test on our tools. We would test their API endpoints. We'd have a sandbox account, push some data, pull some data, make sure it works. Then we say, okay, great, we can work with this. And then we implement it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ali, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Wael, and a pleasure. Honestly, I'm the founder at Nuat. I believe you met Joseph before. So I have a simple question, when building a product under time constraints and budget constraints, how do you decide what to build super well, and what's the certain features you think that should work well for the time being at MVP stage?
So this is a collaborative process. This happens with the founders, right? Many founders, of course, they have a wonderful idea and they say, I want to build the whole thing from day one. Okay. When do you need it by? Oh, I need it tomorrow. Yeah. No, that's not going to happen. All right. If you need it built tomorrow, I need to hire 10 developers to bring in. Do you have the budget for that? No, I do not. Then what do you want to do? I don't know. You're the CTO. You code it. I was like, that's not the CTO's role, right? So it's a collaborative effort. We list out. So we use project management tools, for example, like Jira. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but Jira is a nice project management tool that I use religiously for all my projects. We list out all the main features of the project. We break it down feature by feature. And then we take a look and see, okay, from these features or subsystems, what do I need that I must categorically have before I go live? One simple example, my users need to sign up. They need a place to sign up, right? Username, password, or sign in with Google or whatever it is. And there's a whole bunch of security stuff that needs to happen. If I don't have this, then how could I build a product, a multi-tenant product where I have multiple users, right? So we say, for sure, I need this feature to be active. But then there's other features, like, for example, I need, to calculate my entire stock portfolio holdings. That can wait. I don't need to push this out right now, right? I need to do all the other stuff for you to create a portfolio so that I can then create a portfolio page for you, right? So those features I need to get out the door before I get there. There are other things like, I need to build a screen on my mobile app that shows flying unicorns. Okay, fine, we can build that, but I don't need to build it now. It's outside any kind of critical path for me. I've got other more important things to get going for the user to go from point A to point B. This is just an additional nice to have that we can build later on anytime. So it's these kind of questions that you collaborate between the teams to sit down and say, okay, no, let's get these first. What's the timeline on these features? Agree on the timeline, push that out the door, while obviously making provisions that these other features are going to come online at a later date. Joseph?
Yes, I have a follow-up question to your answer here. So you talked about choosing the right features. I want to build a unicorn versus the sign page. Obviously, the sign-up page is more important. But if I give you, my question is, what if we decided on, let's say, 10 features that are relevant to the app, okay? And we're at the MVP stage. How do we decide what feature has more priority and needs to be implemented faster than the other features? Some features, let's say, equal. I know they use logic and sign up is more important than whatever, but equal features that have equal importance. How do we choose?
Okay. So the quick answer, the quick test that you guys can do on this is very simple. Put yourself in the user's shoes. What features do you need right now that gets the user from signing up all the way to completing whatever it is that you're trying to complete, right? You draw up that user journey. That user journey alone will tell you, okay, if this feature is not complete, the guy cannot continue his journey, right? there's something called UML mapping. You can create a UML diagram that shows who are the actors, and then how that actor is going to transition from step number 1 to step 2 to step 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? When, like, again, one of my startups, he wanted to put everything. I told him, no, listen, we just need to get the user to be able to conduct this transaction. To us, that is the end goal of the MVP, and work backwards. Okay, to get to this stage where this transaction is completed, what are all the steps I need to do before it, up until the point of a user signing up, right? And you fill the gaps in between over here to tell you, okay, these are the features I do need that will help the user complete his journey. If anything is missing over here that stops the user, i.e. the user sits on the screen confused, it's like, okay, what do I do next? That's a critical feature to have.
Okay, thank you. Ali, just excuse me, I just have to follow up before you continue. I think, no, sorry. Just that was not my question. I'm not talking about like I need to finish this so I can go that. I'm talking about when you're building an MVP, how do you choose the features that are most critical so you can go to market, but instead of just choosing like multiple features and just overshooting your MVP, you know, what defines what features I need so it becomes an MVP, you know?
Yeah, that's so. I mean, that's what I was trying to say. The user journey is what defines it. The user journey is the only thing that defines your MVP, because it's the minimum viable product. So it is the minimum amount of things I need to implement in order for a user to get from point A to point X, right? That user journey, when you draw it out, is exactly what then defines. I do this exercise all the time with the founders that I work with, because to them, all features are important. And they're not wrong. All features are important. But if I did not implement feature X, does that stop my user from continuing his journey? If it stops him, then this is a critical one. That's how I would choose to say this feature above another feature. But if there's a feature that I don't need, it doesn't stop the user from critical path from point A to point X, then I don't need this in the MVP stage. That's why it's called the minimum viable product, which has the minimum viable features that allows the journey for the user to complete his journey from point A to point X.
All right, thank you.
Ali?
Yes, so we need to leave the space for everyone else, but I believe this question might help everyone. So when we're testing Wael, as you know, our region, a lot of people have a lot of comments, okay, from a business side, from a technical side, from every side. In your point of view and from your experience, what are the main points the team should focus on and the comments we should focus on that are should be resembling to what we are trying to improve? Okay, we can't take all comments and we can't take all compliments. So what are the main specific places we should look at?
Okay, and now I've used the word critical path a lot over here. Critical path means that if anything disrupts this path, the whole application stops, the user journey stops, everything stops, right? When you get a lot of feedback, and which we do, by the way, we get a lot of feedback from a lot of people. Really, it is up to the C-level team to kind of prioritize, oh, is this feedback or this, let's just say it's a feature request, right? So you got a bunch of feature requests. Hey, do this, do that, whatever it is. Some people will tell you, I don't like your user interface. Change it from pink to brown, as an example, right? Okay, fine, but that's not critical path. However, if a lot of your customers start to ask you for a feature of, for example, hey, I need to see in real time my dollar cost consumption per hour on my solar panels, right? And you have 2, 3, 4 people asking that, then you start to prioritize it. It's still outside critical path. Your entire system works, but this is a new feature that you need to add because more than one person asked for it, or 4 or 5 people asked for it, right? And you put that in your project management tool to say new feature, new feature, new feature. And then you assess based on the feedback that you got, who asked for what, how many people asked for these kind of features, and use that as your priority. But if there's anything that interrupts critical path, that's the one you need to either say, no, this is too big of a change, we need to push it away for later. Or you say, yeah, we're going to take this and integrate it into critical path to make sure that everything works from user journey from the beginning to the end.
Thank you. I love the word critical path. Thank you.
Yeah, my developers don't. To them, everything is not in critical path. Okay, anybody else? All right, I think everybody seems to be okay with that. I will be sharing this presentation with Hani. He'll give you guys a link to download it. And yeah, I mean, my website, my email, everything is right there. Anytime you guys, anybody needs anything from me, just drop me an email.
Okay, thank you, Wael.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Hey, Hani.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Yalla, take care, guys. Good luck.
Thank you, Wael. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.